Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Pine County, Minnesota. Near a small town called Duxbury is a swampy, forested area that is as close to virgin land as exists today. The elevation here is around 1,000 feet, and the marshy land is host to white and red pine, paper and yellow birch trees, sugar maple and balsam fir stands, with quaking aspen woven through the tapestry of flora. The St. Croix State Forest surrounds the town, extending to the southeast, and the Pine County Game Refuge is to the northwest. If you're getting the idea that preservation is a top agenda item for Minnesotans, you'd be right. The larger animals that wander the forests and swamps here include white-tailed deer, elk, bison, and moose, plus tens of species of squirrels, rabbits, and chipmunks. As you might expect, the predators living in these forests are just as diverse as the prey animals. They include bobcats, Canada lynx, cougars, coyotes, gray wolves, and a growing population of large black bears. On the evening of September 27, 2014, 44-year-old Brandon Johnson, 54-year-old Craig Lindstrom, and 24-year-old Trevor Nowack were enjoying their 12th annual bear hunting trip. The hunters preferred to pursue the bears with their bows, which is a whole new level of bear hunting. Lindstrom was a volunteer firefighter and certified in first aid, which would come in handy on this day. The hottest part of the day reached into the lower 80s, warmer than usual for this time of year. Nowack had stalked upon a large black bear earlier in the day and worked his way into a close-range shot with his bow. He drew back his arrow and let fly, striking the bear in the vitals. After watching the bear dash into the brush, Nowack approached the place where the bear was and recovered his arrow. Inspecting the arrow, he could see a thick layer of blood covering it, from broadhead to fletching. This was evidence that the bear had been struck in a lethal spot, and its demise would be forthcoming. Nowack returned to camp and told the other hunters of how he had hit the huge black bear, and it had left a promising blood trail. Given it was late in the day, the hunters decided to pick up the trail in the morning, before reconsidering. They were experienced hunters, and pursued bears for their meat. The hunters discussed how if they waited until morning, the bear meat might be soured and inedible. Agreeing to follow the bear's bloody trail by flashlight, they headed back to the location where Nowack had shot the bear. Their headlamps lit up the dense foliage, creating ominous shadows as the hunters found the blood trail. The cloak of night hid anything only a few feet from the edges of their lights and alerted any animal in their path of their approach. After a few hundred yards, the men came upon a river. Lindstrom carried his Glock 45 pistol and watched as Nowack and Johnson waded through the water up to their armpits as they crossed the river. The two hunters were armed only with knives and pressed the blood trail through knee-deep swamps in places on the other side of the river. Nowack and Johnson picked up the blood trail on the other side of the river and separated themselves from Lindstrom by a couple of hundred yards. Then a huge black shadow that refused to be chased away by their headlamps appeared. It was the giant black bear lying on the ground, seemingly dead. Approaching the bear's carcass, they were startled when it dashed back toward Lindstrom. Nowack and Johnson yelled to their friend that the bear was coming his way. His headlamp flashed left and right, trying to find the bear before it found him. Instead of seeing the bear, Lindstrom's attention was drawn back to where Nowack and Johnson were, as they began to yell. Johnson was staring into the darkness beyond the reach of his headlamp when the enraged black bear leapt upon him from the brush nearby. The impact of the bear sent Johnson's headlamp flying and knocked him unconscious. He came to as the bear stood over him, staring him in the face. Its jaws were wide open, and it moved to bite into Johnson's neck to kill him. He remembered seeing the outline of the bear with shining stars glittering behind it. Then he felt one of its canines pierce his chin. Johnson didn't hesitate to defend himself. He struck out at the bear with his left arm, pushing its jaws away from crushing his neck. As he tossed his left arm, the bear sank its teeth into his forearm and twisted his hand all the way around. His ulna and radius bones crunched under the pressure of the bear's jaws, and Johnson responded to the pain by stabbing the bear with the hunting knife in his right hand. Stabbing the bear quickly and repeatedly, he tried to inflict as much damage to the bear as he could, as it held his forearm in its jaws. In the flashing lights, Nowack could see the bear over Johnson and yelled at the bear, trying to draw its attention. They hadn't brought bear spray, and Lindstrom had the only firearm with him, so it was all he could do at this point. As Lindstrom heard the hunters screaming, he pulled his pistol from his holster and jumped into the river to come to the defense of his hunting partners. The black bear dashed back into the brush, secreted by the dark of night. Lindstrom stumbled and tripped toward the other hunters as Johnson muttered, I'm hurt, to Nowack, and hoped the bear attack was over. It may have been Johnson's voice that brought the bear back for a follow-up attack. It once again rushed from the brush toward the injured hunter. Johnson had again stuck his left arm into the bear's mouth and repeatedly stabbed it with his right hand. During the furious attack, the bear twisted Johnson's left arm, severely breaking and gashing his arm, while enduring Johnson's stabbing defense. The bear stepped back after a few seconds of mauling the man and being stabbed several times. It growled for a moment, before pouncing on Johnson for a third attack. Johnson's left arm was now limp, so he used his right arm to drape it across his face. The bear opened its mouth wide, determined to end the hunter's life. Doing the only thing he could think of, Johnson shoved his right hand into the bear's mouth, along with the knife it held. He plunged the knife into the flesh at the back of the bear's mouth, and slashed and stabbed as many times as he could. He stabbed the bear with so much force that he broke 2 of his own fingers. The bear clamped down on his forearm with Johnson's hand still inside its mouth. It bit down and broke Johnson's arm bones in his right forearm and tossed its head, ripping ligaments and tendons, controlling his hand and wrist. Blood flowed into Johnson's eyes, blinding him. It was pouring from the bear's mouth and into Johnson's mouth, causing him to cough and choke as well. As he wiped the blood from his eyes, he could see blood pumping from the bear's mouth, as he knew he would kill it. After chewing up Johnson's right arm, it focused its attack on his leg, and then bit into his chest. His arms flopped in useless disobedience of his desire to fight the bear off. Just as Johnson realized he could do nothing to stop the bear, it disappeared into the brush again. At this time, Lindstrom burst through the brush and found his friends. Johnson was lying on the ground as Lindstrom started first aid. He searched for a pulse, but found none. Lindstrom wiped the blood from Johnson's eyes and asked him if he could breathe. Johnson replied, I'm not going to make it. Tell my kids I love them. Although the black bear may have been circling the men, preparing for another attack, Nowack and Lindstrom began an effort to save Johnson's life. They improvised tourniquets on each arm and strapped them to his chest in contrived slings. They knew they had to get him away from the bear and to medical help as soon as possible. After wiping the blood from Johnson's eyes, the group realized the blood had come from the bear. Helping Johnson to his feet, they dragged him at times, the mile back to their four-wheelers. After a 3-hour struggle through swamps and across the rivers, the men bounced Johnson down the trail back to their camp on their four-wheelers. Using their cell phones, they reached out to 911, and a medical helicopter was dispatched to their location. Johnson was flown to North Memorial Medical Center in Robbinsdale. He endured 3 surgeries and months of rehabilitation before recovering. Lindstrom later stated that though the men were experienced bear hunters, they'd learned a few things that night. They should have backed out after not finding the bear near where it was struck by the arrow. They all agreed to carry sidearms whenever they pursued black bear from that point on. The following day, Lindstrom and Nowack returned with 8 other hunters to search for the bear. Ethically, they knew they couldn't leave the bear in the forest, especially given its injuries. A few yards from Johnson's attack site, the massive black bear was found lying on its stomach and resting its head on its crossed paws. It took the men 4 hours to drag the 535-pound bear out to their four-wheelers. Johnson's injuries include 2 broken arms and bite wounds to his jaw, face, legs, and chest. Even after this much pain and punishment, Johnson maintains he feels lucky to be alive. Lindstrom and his friends had the bear's hide tanned as a reminder of their time together. In Minnesota, there have been 6 black bear attacks since 1987, and only 1 was unprovoked by human behavior. Minnesota is home to between 13,000 and 18,000 black bears and has a fall bear hunting season beginning in September and ending in mid-October. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Is it reasonable to take up a blood trail on a wounded bear after a few hours of waiting? Do you think bear spray would have prevented this bear attack? Could the men have defended themselves with firearms from an attack in the dark? Would you follow a wounded black bear into the night armed only with a knife? I know there's no way I would do that. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.